just treat animals as being, I wouldn't even treat a cup, I wouldn't break cups or throw cups, or I don't even like to throw away used ballpoint pens. But we treat animals worse than school children will treat a used up ballpoint pen. So millions and millions are just grown in these factory farms without any concern for their comfort, for their well-being, and as soon as they're big enough to be slaughtered, they're slaughtered in mass. So we have to benefit and help both human beings and the animals. And then what's particularly urgent is care for the natural domain, because all of life unfolds within the natural domain, whether it be every country in the world is enfolded by the natural domain. And yet what we see today is, it's almost incomprehensible to me how those people in positions of power within the corporations, especially the fossil fuel corporations, will do everything they can, fossil fuels, coal, gas, oil, do everything they can to obscure the truth, the compelling reality of global warming, holding these phony conferences, the International Conference on Climate Change, sponsored by one organization. They bring together 500 people, they call them scientists, who testify that global warming is not such an urgent problem, that those who report about it are being unnecessarily alarmist. I think in Germany you don't have this problem at all. People always recognize global warming as being real. But in America, the powers, the head of these corporations, together with their henchmen, the politicians, on one side the politicians, on the other side the mainstream media, do everything they can to obstruct and obscure the reality of how we are destroying the natural base for human civilization on Earth. And so this also becomes what I would call a sacred or spiritual obligation for us today. Okay, I said that my ideas are still rather undefined and rather sketchy. So maybe I'll just stop the presentation here without trying to go into more detail. And just if there's anybody who has any questions, comments, please feel welcome to speak. I just want to get...
The traditional practice is to develop meditation to the point of getting off the wheel of samsara, nibbana. And it would look at the kind of activities we're engaged in here as maybe, not a waste of time wouldn't be the word, but maybe not direct path to practice. Whereas what I think I'm hearing you say is there's a place in this pathway to nibbana for opening the heart and acting in the world and being off the cushion while we're doing that. So we're not being off the cushion while we're doing that.
That opens up sort of another aspect of the scheme that I'm still working on in my mind. It's not yet fully, clearly defined, but it makes things a lot more complex, but I'll bring this in anyway. And this is going beyond, let's say, traditional Theravada Buddhism or just Buddhism itself, but I'm trying to look at trends and possibilities within world spirituality as a whole, trying to get some overall picture of what's going on. And I see what I would call two different types of movement taking place within what I call the spiritual life, spirituality, the spiritual career. Okay, the two movements, one is the movement of what I would call ascent, and the other is the movement of descent. Now, traditional Theravada teaching, or Buddhist teaching in general, but maybe especially in early Buddhism, whatever school, places the emphasis on the movement of ascent, because that is Buddhism begins with human beings and the human condition, subject to birth, old age, sickness, death, bound up by the defilements. And so the initial call, so to speak, is to get out of the misery of samsara, to realize the ultimate bliss and freedom, and ultimate bliss, freedom, wisdom of nirvana. And so we do this by developing the factors of the 37 factors of enlightenment, especially the 4 foundations of mindfulness through right effort, to develop samadhi, and then panya, wisdom, to reach the paramatta, the final goal, the supreme goal. But now what strikes me always as a very interesting event in the life of the Buddha, as we see it recorded in Majjhima Nikaya 26 and some other sources, when the Buddha, after his enlightenment, he's sitting in the vicinity of the Bodhi tree, he considers, shall I go out and teach? Then too much trouble, I won't do this. I can't do this. So this, the way I see it, is almost symbolically representing the culmination of the movement of ascent. He's risen up to the very highest level, completed it, and now completely detached from the world. But then the world is not going to let the Buddha slip off into Nibbana. So Brahma comes as representing, you could say, the spokesman for the beings of the world, and kneels before the Buddha and says, please, O enlightened one, don't abandon sentient beings. There are those who will understand. And so then the Buddha looks out at the world with his vision, sees indeed that there are those who can understand, and then decides, open to them are the doors to the deathless. I will go forth and beat the drum of Dhamma. Let those who have faith listen. So that, to my mind, symbolizes, in early Buddhism, the movement of descent. And we see this extended more widely in early Buddhism, applied to the Sangha as a whole. On the one hand, the Buddha's instruction is,